it will not be late.
Welcome to our update. In many parts of the world, conventions are underway. In fact, as of early July, over 2.3 million have attended the Exercise Patience regional conventions in person. Seeing old friends and making new ones at the conventions is bringing so much joy to God's people. And the program is truly spiritual food at the proper time. Those who have already attended the convention have benefited greatly, and we are sure those who will be attending in the future, you're going to love it.
Well, that's reassuring. We're going to love it, so says Gerrit Loesch, governing body member. Hello there, by the way. I'm Lloyd Evans, and you're watching my thoughts on the Exercise Patience 2023 Convention of Jehovah's Witnesses, right here from the attic. The conventions are held annually. They take place over 3 days. I've already done the first day, Friday, over 2 rebuttals. I'm now getting my teeth into the Saturday program, this rebuttal dealing with the Saturday morning session. There's a lot of material that apparently we're all going to really enjoy and benefit from as spiritual food. So without further ado, let's roll the first clip.
Hey, Gabe.
Oh, hey, Olivia. How's it going?
It's going good. Just doing another letter writing territory, so you know how that is.
Okay, well.
Hey, Gabe. Good to see you.
Hey, Sue. It's good to see you, too.
Is that Gabe? Oh, hey, baby. How's Bethel?
Hey, Mom. It's busy, but great. I'm learning a lot.
Oh, look who just got home from work.
Hey, Gabe.
Hey, Max. So, if it's possible, can you send me some more of my things? I can text you a list.
Absolutely. I'll get right on it.
Great. Thank you so much. Olivia, I'll let you get back to letter writing.
Great.
Hey. All right, we'll let you go. Love you.
Okay. Love you, too.
Hi.
Bye.
Bye.
So, Olivia, I thought that you enjoyed letter writing.
I don't know. It just feels like another letter, another envelope, and another black hole.
Black hole?
Yeah, stuff goes in, but nothing ever comes out of it.
It's not that bad.
What do you mean? You were just telling me that no one's responded to you.
Okay. Yeah, I get a little antsy for replies. Like I texted my old classmate, Sarah, but she just hasn't said anything back to me yet. I just hope I didn't overdo it. What do you think? Is it too much? Do you think it's too much? It's too much.
Sure she'll get back to you. All right. Is everything on Gabe's list?
Thank you.
At least we'll have a little more room for when your mom moves in.
Yeah. Anyway, Gabe will love this. He already told me how much he misses fishing.
What if we do something a little different for family worship this week?
Sure.
So, this is where you and Gabe would fish, right?
Yep. We learned a lot of lessons about fishing here. So lately, preaching's felt like a black hole, right? We have the right equipment. But what does a fisherman need more than anything? Second Corinthians 6:4. It says, "But in every way we recommend ourselves as God's ministers by..." Now, what does verse 6 say, Olivia?
It says, by purity, by knowledge, by patience.
Patience. It helps us to keep trying again and again, to not give up. And we're not casting into a black hole, but into a blue sea full of deserving ones. Now, maybe we can't see it, but Jehovah knows they're there. And it may take some time, but if we're patient together, we'll find them. Now, Irene's got some great ideas on how to make our letter writing more personal.
Wow, it sounds like Irene finally has something worth listening to, according to Max, which wasn't the case in last year's Pursue Peace convention, when Irene effectively got shut down by Max because she was talking too much during family worship. And we know in the Jehovah's Witness religion, women are supposed to be silent when it comes to teaching. So thumbnail here, if Tibor is gracious to the relevant sushi, straight away we're learning, just from this brief clip that we've just seen, that women only are able to teach when they are invited to do so on a specific theme by a man. In case you're wondering, this dramatization is being shown as part of the Saturday morning symposium We Recommend Ourselves as God's Ministers by Patience, and this particular installment or episode, I don't know what you'd call them, is when preaching. And straight away, when you're hearing the metaphor about fishing, which obviously isn't unique to Jehovah's Witnesses, I mean, that's something that they take straight out of the Bible. But doesn't that give you a clue as to the recruitment process? It's not like people are willingly being attracted to the Jehovah's Witness religion due to their amazing reputation and due to their incredible teachings, which are just wowing people. All you need to do is do a brief search online and straight away you'll be impressed by how amazing the Jehovah's Witness beliefs are. No, this is about essentially hunting for prey, which is essentially what fishing is. I mean, you are extracting a resource for your benefit, not theirs. It's not like the fish want to be caught or benefit from being caught. The only person who benefits by a fish being caught is the person who either sells the fish or the person who ends up with the fish in their belly. That's how fishing works. So it's interesting how that's the metaphor of choice in the Bible, and how effortlessly and enthusiastically Jehovah's Witnesses appeal to this metaphor. And what I found especially interesting was the following.
And we're not casting into a black hole, but into a blue sea full of deserving ones. Now, maybe we can't see it, but Jehovah knows they're there. And it may take some time, but if we're patient together, we'll find them.
A blue sea of deserving ones. I've spoken before about this loaded language, because what it amounts to is gaslighting. What they're saying by using this phrase, deserving ones, is they're saying, you're only going to want to be a Jehovah's Witness if you are deserving. If you are a good person, if you are worth saving, if there's something about you that's special, one way or another, you will find your way to our organization because you are deserving. This is a classic cult manipulation trick, using language, weaponizing language to lure people in or retain people who have been lured in, because this is first and foremost language that's being used on Jehovah's Witnesses so that they can feel special. They can feel, well, we're the deserving few. We're the ones who get to survive Armageddon. But interesting, just looking overall at this part of the dramatization where we're again revisiting this family, Max, Irene, Gabe, Olivia, and Susan. It's interesting how this particular part of the dramatization seems geared at reassuring Jehovah's Witnesses that their letter writing witnessing, which came to the fore during the pandemic as effectively the only way Jehovah's Witnesses could preach, or one of the only ways Jehovah's Witnesses could preach, it seems geared at trying to convince Jehovah's Witnesses that even if they're not getting any reaction or any positive results to these letters, it's still worthwhile for them to be bothering people with letters and emails.
John 16, verse 12, Jesus said, I still have many things to say to you, but you are not able to bear them now. Yes, Jesus discerned when the apostles were simply not able to deal with a certain teaching. What did he do? He simply skipped over it. In essence, he told them, it's fine, we'll deal with this later. So, how can we be patient as we teach? We imitate Jesus. To begin, we treat each student uniquely. Each person is a unique individual. We don't assume that what worked for one student is going to work for another student. So in this regard, we use our study aids, such as Enjoy Life Forever, effectively, not rigidly. Now, what would be a rigid approach to using Enjoy Life Forever? Well, it could be something like this. We did question 2, now we do question 3. We did lesson 12, now we do lesson 13. But what if, in the course of discussing lesson 13, we find that our student is really struggling to grasp the point, or maybe even more, struggling to accept the point that we're discussing from the scriptures? Well, if we discerned this, we could simply keep pounding away on lesson 13 until they either finally get it or give up, or we could consider applying Jesus' example. Why not simply say we can skip this and deal with it later, as we learned in John 16, verse 12.
This was absolutely fascinating. Thank you for saying the quiet part out loud. Michael Reno from the Warwick, New York headquarters, who we've been listening to there, Michael's been taking us through the symposium item on the Saturday morning of the Exercise Patience Convention. We recommend ourselves as God's ministers by patience when teaching Bible students. And in essence, what Michael's just been saying here is, if a Bible student or someone studying with Jehovah's Witnesses disagrees with us on a certain point, just shelve it. Just say, well, we'll come back to that later. Maybe they'll even forget that they brought the subject up to begin with. And by the time they remember that there was this thing that they actually didn't agree with, they will already have been sold on other points. They will already have swallowed huge chunks of indoctrination. And so, because they're so committed to this ideology, because they have the sunk cost fallacy, in other words, they've invested so much, this little niggling thing that wasn't addressed earlier on in the Bible study suddenly becomes more palatable. That's what he's describing here. That's how cults manipulate people. I get asked time and time again in the comments to these videos or when I'm chatting with people in person, how do people fall for this stuff? Well, here's one example. When Jehovah's Witnesses are studying with interested ones, they are encouraged by their leaders to withhold information, to be sneaky, to be surreptitious, to say to their Bible students, you know what, you may not agree with what we're talking about here, it may not make any sense to you, but you know what, let's leave it for now, and maybe it will make sense later.
Now, the Apostle Paul used an illustration that we're going to consider that also shows the need for patience in our teaching. I invite you to open your Bibles, please, to 2 Corinthians 10, verses 4 and 5. As we read these verses, I'd like for you to note two key points that we can take away that show the need for patience in our teaching. Now, the word patience does not appear in these verses, but the idea is there. See if you can pick it out. 2 Corinthians 10, verse 4, "For the weapons of our warfare are not fleshly, but powerful by God for overturning strongly entrenched things. For we are overturning reasonings and every lofty thing raised up against the knowledge of God, and we are bringing every thought into captivity to make it obedient to the Christ." So in Paul's illustration, the first point we want to take away is that we're engaged in a warfare, but we are not fighting the student. We are fighting with the student against what we read in verse 5, the reasonings and lofty things raised up against the knowledge of God. So it takes patience for us to help the student to get on our side and work with us in fighting against these false teachings, these false beliefs, false practices that they've been told all their lives. It takes patience and time for them to join us in this fight. But there's another key aspect of this illustration. Look again at verse 4, the latter phrase that we read there, that these weapons that we have, they're powerful by God for overturning strongly entrenched things. Now, the study note for 2 Corinthians 10, verse 4 shows that the word picture that Paul is using is the idea of overturning or toppling a mighty or powerful fortress. And the fortress, of course, representing these beliefs and practices that are opposed to God. How is patience involved? Remember, the student lives in the fortress. So if we are in a mad rush to try to tear that fortress down, we're just tearing it down right on top of their head. We have to help them to get out of the fortress, to run to Jehovah as their refuge, and then we can work with them to overturn these strongly entrenched things, all the beliefs and practices that they've been told all their lives.
This is a fascinating insight, isn't it, into how Jehovah's Witnesses go about their preaching or recruitment. We're again hearing from Michael Reno, who is a Bethelite from the Warwick, New York headquarters, and he's appealing to a Bible verse that describes preaching as warfare, but he wants to stress that it's not the student, it's not the interested one that Jehovah's Witnesses are fighting.
So in Paul's illustration, the first point we want to take away is that we're engaged in a warfare, but we are not fighting the student. We are fighting with the student against what we read in verse 5, the reasonings and lofty things raised up against the knowledge of God.
Yes, this isn't the Jehovah's Witness versus the student. This is more like a coalition. This is the Jehovah's Witness fighting with the student against the wrong ideas, which, according to the Bible verse, are to be overturned. My question to Michael Reno would be, how are you overturning ideas that are in contradiction to Jehovah's Witness beliefs, specifically knowledge and information and facts that debunk Jehovah's Witness beliefs? If your response to those facts is to encourage your student to bury their heads in the sand, how are you overturning them? That's manifestly not the approach that Jehovah's Witnesses take. If Michael Reno's talk were to be taken literally, what you would find whenever someone's studying with Jehovah's Witnesses is that if they bring up an objection or a criticism against Jehovah's Witnesses, the Jehovah's Witness would say, well, show me the article or show me the video where you found this. And they'd say, okay, here's the link. It would come up on the WhatsApp and they'd click on it. Okay, well, let's forensically examine this argument. Let's go through this page on JW Facts and let's look up all of the references to historical Jehovah's Witness publications. let's delve into the logic that's being used here by Paul Grundy. Let's closely examine the argument that we're hearing on the Lloyd Evans channel or wherever. Let's pick it apart and see if it makes sense. And in that way, we will overturn this false reasoning that's being used by apostates or by someone with ideas contrary to the Jehovah's Witness organization. I think we can all agree, whether we are Jehovah's Witnesses or ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, that that's simply not how it works.
All ready for section 2, right?
Guess so.
Okay. Well, first, we'll see how false religion gets God totally wrong. Did you get a chance to study?
Yeah, I read ahead.
Okay. Is everything okay?
I'm fine. Let's just get started.
Okay. So then we'll watch a video on churches during World War II and why Jehovah will have no choice but to... Something's up. What's wrong?
I don't know. I read that all religions are false.
Well, yeah, but you have to remember that, like...
I don't know. It's just...
What?
It's just all getting so serious.
Well, yeah. It's life and death. Why waste time on the study if she's not going to take it serious?
So you said all of that to her?
No, just the well, yeah part. But I wanted to. She used to be so excited for study. I don't know. Maybe she's just not getting it.
I think she is learning. Maybe it's just really sinking in.
If it's sinking in, then what's the problem? Maybe it's me.
You know what really helped me when I first started pioneering? I learned that Jesus had to be patient with his disciples. They weren't always ready to learn the things that he was teaching them. That means that we have to be patient with our Bible students too. Let it reach your heart. And be patient with yourself.
I was thinking a lot about our study, and I really wanted to know how you were feeling about it.
As I was reading ahead, it finally hit me. All the churches in the world are lying. My mom's included. And God's just going to destroy them all. You know, maybe I'm just not ready for some of this.
I understand where you're coming from. Give yourself some time to learn why Jehovah's ways are just. The better you get to know him, the more his teachings are gonna touch your heart. Trust me. I promise you it'll be worth the wait.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay. So let's get to know Jehovah better. Do you remember?
That's all it takes, apparently, if you're one of Jehovah's Witnesses and you're trying to recruit someone into the group and they're struggling to get their heads around how culty everything is. All you need to do is just be a bit patient with them. And gradually, if you give them enough time, the penny's going to drop. That's the message of this installment of the Max, Irene, Gabe, Olivia, and Sue epic saga from the Exercise Patience 2023 convention. This particular installment is part of the symposium We Recommend Ourselves as God's Ministers by Patience. And we've just been watching the section of the dramatization for when teaching Bible students. And we're learning, well, we learn a lot of things. And here's the first clip I want to comment on.
It's just all getting so serious.
Well, yeah, it's life and death. Why waste time on the study if she's not going to take it serious?
So you said all of that to her?
No, just the well, yeah part. But I wanted to.
I wanted to be honest. I wanted to be upfront with my Bible student and tell them that it's a doomsday group, that this is an existential issue, and if she doesn't accept my religious beliefs, she will die at an impending Armageddon. I wanted to be upfront about it all, but I decided to hold that back. That's the level of dishonesty that is being embraced here by Jehovah's Witnesses. Then you have this gem.
Maybe it's just really sinking in.
If it's sinking in, then what's the problem? Maybe it's me.
Maybe it's me. Maybe the fault lies with me. So the makers of the dramatization are acknowledging that Jehovah's Witnesses will look to themselves as being the problem if their Bible student is having a problem grasping just how culty, just how controlling this group is. If a Bible student has all sorts of red flags in front of them and they're saying, so you really expect me to believe that everyone who isn't a Jehovah's Witness is going to die soon at Armageddon? If the Bible student is struggling with that, the Jehovah's Witness can be forgiven for thinking, it's probably my fault for not explaining it properly. I don't think that this particular part of the dramatization is justifying that reaction on the part of Jehovah's Witnesses, but it's at least acknowledging that that's how Jehovah's Witnesses will naturally respond in many cases when they're coming up against pushback. And finally, I just wanted to revisit this part.
Give yourself some time to learn why Jehovah's ways are just. The better you get to know him, the more his teachings are going to touch your heart.
Give yourself some time. That's the solution. Give yourself more time to be indoctrinated with all of the more palatable teachings. Ponder a little bit on the whole paradise, earth, pandas, watermelon stuff, and the thought of welcoming back dead loved ones. Dwell on that a little bit more and get roped into those teachings that appeal to you. And after a while, due to the sunk cost fallacy, due to you having invested so much in these beliefs that you like, maybe the beliefs that you don't like, or the beliefs that don't make sense now, will have to make sense, because by this point, you need this to be the truth.
He's just going to be working even more. I just don't know what to do about it because he's barely home as it is. Are you still listening to me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm so tired. I don't have the support I need. You know?
I know.
And it never seems to end. I don't know why this keeps happening to me.
I know it seems that way, but sometimes the decisions you make have consequences that don't go away.
Excuse me? Not everyone is perfect like you. In your perfect life, Irene.
I'm sorry. That's not what I meant.
I don't have time for this.
I'm sorry, that's not what I meant.
Everything okay?
Dora just hung up on me.
Well, maybe she was just having a bad day.
Every day is a bad day for Dora. It's not my fault that she married that guy from work. I just wish she would have listened.
She has made some bad decisions, but that was years ago. Don't give up on her.
I'm not giving up on her. I just need a break from her.
I know this isn't easy, but try and imagine what it must be like for her.
And yet, when we reflect on statements like that, we can agree that hope is so important. Why? Because we all deal with suffering and tragic events in one form or another. We can take comfort in learning and knowing that our Heavenly Father Jehovah is not insensitive or uncaring. In fact, if we examine the Bible record, we see that there is no point of failure. Our Heavenly Father Jehovah put into motion
Makes me think about 1 Thessalonians 5:11. Keep encouraging one another and building one another up, just as you are in fact doing. We can do so much good when we're patient, just like Jehovah is with us.
Hi, Irene.
Hi, Dora. I was calling because I wanted to apologize for what I said.
I'm sorry, too.
I know that you're dealing with a lot right now. And I really do see how much you love Jehovah. I just want you to know I'm always here for you.
Thanks, Irene. That really means a lot to me. You know, I was thinking about going out to service tomorrow. Would you like to go with me?
I'd love to go.
Great. I have this really cool new return visit. Her name is Katie.
Irene is always there for Dora, so long as Dora shares her beliefs. So we're watching the latest installment in this epic saga of Max, Irene, Gabe, Olivia, and Sue. This is continuing from last year's Pursue Peace convention. We're following essentially the same characters, the same family. This particular installment appears on the Saturday morning session of this year's Exercise Patience Convention. The theme of the symposium: we recommend ourselves as God's ministers by patience when encouraging one another. And it seems Irene failed in her duty to encourage her friend Dora when Dora was opening up about her problems being married to someone who was working too much and who, most importantly, was not one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And Irene responded to these problems by being incredibly cold and essentially blaming everything on Dora. Well, these are the consequences of your actions. You need to deal with these consequences because you ignored the advice to marry only in the Lord, and you went ahead and married someone who's not a Jehovah's Witness. So what were you expecting was going to happen? Is essentially Irene's reaction. In a way, this dramatization gets it right by being realistic. This is how judgmental Jehovah's Witnesses can be in real life. they feel entitled to cast judgment on other people's private lives, on other people's relationships. And I have to say, this judgmentalism can even carry on over once someone wakes up from Jehovah's Witnesses and becomes an ex-Jehovah's Witness. They can keep on being just as judgmental, just as intrusive, just as entitled when it comes to the ins and outs of other people's private lives. But what irritates me about this dramatization is the misogyny. We've already seen in this series that the makers of this propaganda are intensely misogynistic. They have already made it very clear that women, for example, don't get any say when it comes to family worship. They need to stay silent. They need to let their husband do the teaching. Thumbnail here again to the same sushi that I alluded to earlier, if Tibor is gracious. The makers of this series are very misogynist in not only reminding women that they should stay silent, but in this case, depicting women as being these cruel, backbiting, heartless individuals who need to be corrected by their husbands. The husband, in this case, Max, he's the wonderful, patient guy who's giving words of wisdom. And Irene is, again, this cold, insensitive individual who needs to apologize for being so mean at a time when her friend needed help. Let's contrast this situation and what Irene did wrong with the next part of the dramatization.
So these are our public talk schedules
Hey,
for
Wayne.
the past few years.
Hey, Sister Jones.
Hey, what are you two up to?
Wayne's going to be helping with public talk scheduling.
Oh, great. Well, I'll let y'all get to it.
So, we already have these weeks scheduled. We just need to keep confirming with the speakers and quickly replacing any cancellations. That's pretty important.
I can totally do that. I actually have some new ideas on how to handle that.
Okay, good. But a phone call should be fine.
Don't worry. It's not that hard. I can handle it. Can I show you my idea on how to streamline the process?
More than a phone call?
Yeah. The speaker isn't here.
I'm sorry, what? Did you call and confirm like I asked you to?
No. But what can I do?
Well, nothing now. I'll take care of it. Wayne forgot to confirm the speaker, so I have to give the talk now.
You did a nice job on your part.
Thanks.
I think Wayne just forgot. Hey, Gabe.
Hi, Mom. How you guys doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Good. I'm doing good. I'm just checking on the things you were sending me. They haven't come in yet.
Oh, no. That's weird.
That's my fault, Gabe. I completely forgot to send it. I can't believe I missed that.
It's okay. Don't worry
No,
about
it's
it.
not. You needed those things, Gabe.
No, Max, it's fine. Don't worry. I mean, everybody forgets things sometimes. And it's just one package. You and Mom already do so much for me, so don't worry. It's fine.
Thanks.
Thanks, Gabe. I'll get right on it. I gotta make a phone call.
Okay. Things are getting pretty busy around here.
I'm sorry about the mix-up.
It's okay, Wayne. We all forget things sometimes. You know, I want to apologize myself. I didn't mean to lose my patience. I shouldn't have reacted like that at the Kingdom Hall. I'm sorry. You know, when I first got this assignment, I made some mistakes myself.
Really?
Yeah, I really did. So I had scheduled 2 speakers.
So that's what Max needs to apologize for. He needs to apologize for exercising quite a lot of restraint when he shows his apprentice, or he shows Wayne how to do a job, and Wayne doesn't do it. And he doesn't get angry or anything. I mean, sure, he's terse. He's not like all gushing over Wayne and saying, hey, it's fine, everything's okay. You can tell through Max's body language that there's a problem, but it's not like he gets into like a shouting match in the Kingdom Hall. He just gets on and he gives the talk as a stand-in, which is what you'd have to do in that situation where a speaker doesn't show up. He shows a lot of restraint, and yet this is the thing that Max does wrong. And you compare this dramatization with the dramatization that we've just seen, where Irene is again incredibly cruel and insensitive and judgmental at a time when her friend needs help, albeit her friend doesn't really need help. Her friend needs help because she's in a cult. And of course, being in a cult is going to cause problems in her marriage if she's married to someone who isn't in the cult. But you can see the big gulf between the way Max is portrayed and the way Irene is portrayed. For me, again, this is misogyny. The makers of this series of dramatizations want us to view Max in a far more favorable light than his wife.
Now, what does forgiveness mean? What does it involve? Well, it certainly does not mean condoning the wrong or minimizing it, or even acting like it didn't even happen. No, forgiveness means pardoning the offender, means letting go of the anger, the resentment, and thoughts of revenge. So why might someone be inclined to consider forgiveness? Well, for one, being forgiving shows appreciation. The first slave failed to have any gratitude for what the master had done for him. He did not pay it forward, as they say today. If we truly appreciate what Jehovah has done for us and his great mercy toward us, then we will be moved to forgive others. Secondly, harboring resentment is damaging. Harboring resentment can be harmful to our physical and mental health. And when we forgive others, it's really kind of like a gift to ourselves. We find peace of mind and heart, and we're able to move ahead in our service to Jehovah. Third, vengeance belongs to Jehovah. Jehovah has not authorized us to seek revenge when someone sins against us. Jehovah inspired James to write, "Man's anger does not bring about God's righteousness." Yes, vengeance belongs to Jehovah. And fourth, forgiveness shows our confidence in Jehovah's justice. We're confident that Jehovah will indeed undo all the harm that sin has caused.
Jehovah's going to undo all the harm that sin has caused. If you've been sinned against, you need to just leave it with him. Leave it with him to sort everything out. This is the advice from David McMahon, who is a Bethelite from Wallkill, the Wallkill, New York facility, or Bethel of Jehovah's Witnesses. He is giving the item on the Saturday morning of the Exercise Patience Convention. You who have been shown patience, show patience. All of this is horrendous advice, especially in the context of those who have been through sexual abuse. When you play this talk in the context of, for example, what's happening at the moment in Pennsylvania, thumbnail here to the most recent JW Watch episode where we go through the latest developments in the Pennsylvania grand jury, where they've so far uncovered 14 individuals in their investigation, all of whom have used positions of power and trust within the Jehovah's Witness organization to abuse children. When you contemplate this epidemic, this rampant child abuse within the organization, and then you play back those words, isn't it obvious how easy it is for abuse to get swept under the rug when you have survivors and victims being given advice like this, being told that in order to show gratitude and appreciation, they need to be forgiving, that it's a matter of their health. They need to let go of resentment. And it's a gift to ourselves. It's a gift to you, survivors of abuse, if you can forgive your abuser. Just think for a moment, if you are one of Jehovah's Witnesses, the permutations of this. Imagine being an abuse victim or survivor, and there being someone in your congregation, perhaps even in your family, who has abused you, and the elders know about it, and you have to go to every meeting with this individual just a few meters away from you, perhaps even sat in the row in front or the row behind, or maybe even next to you. And here you're being told, you know what, you've got to forgive them because this is a matter of you showing appreciation.
Mom, let me carry that.
I got it, Irene. You know, I'm not that old. I got it.
You know, I really like that doctor.
What was he, 15? You know, he's not going to be practicing on me.
I'm gonna keep packing your stuff, okay?
Okay, dear. Irene, don't forget my therapy appointment on Wednesday morning.
I can't on Wednesday. Let me ask Elena.
I just need you to finish filling out the second page here, and then sign and date at the bottom, and then we'll be good to go.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. What do you need, Irene?
Hello to you too. Mom needs you to take her to an appointment on Wednesday.
No, I can't. Can you skip your preaching thing or whatever?
I have to work at a real job.
I've had my hands full. I just need a little more help.
Please.
I'll see what I can do, but no promises.
Look, I gotta go.
Well, I can tell Elena's not going to be much help, but I'll figure it out.
You know, your sister had a tough year. You should study with her.
You know, we have tried so many times. She doesn't want to study.
I think you're just too hard on her, Irene.
Hey, I swapped shifts so I could take Mom on Wednesday. You owe me, little Miss Righteous.
Maybe she would study.
What, Elena? There's nothing I can do.
Weren't you close growing up? Grandma thinks you can reach her heart.
Yeah, well, Grandma also thinks she can live on her own.
Okay. I know you tried, but just don't stop trying, okay?
Okay.
Did you notice how forgetful Grandma's getting?
Yeah. With all humility and mildness, with patience, putting up with one another in love.
Thank you. No problem. You're the best. What did I do wrong now?
Nothing. I just wanted to say thank you.
And?
And how are you doing? I really miss talking to my little sister.
No judgment?
No judgment.
Okay. I don't know if you know this,
but I went to see Mom the other day. She was taking out pictures of us when we were kids. Remember when she...
We've just been watching the next installment in a series of dramatizations featuring Irene, Max, Gabe, Olivia, and Sue. This is a continuation from last year's convention. In this year's exercise patience convention, the series where this family of Jehovah's Witnesses are dealing with various situations is continuing on the Saturday morning session. This particular talk is part of a symposium with patients put up with one another in love. And the specific title of this item is Unbelieving Relatives. So we're seeing here a portrayal from a Jehovah's Witness perspective of an unbelieving relative. When the dramatization first started, I assumed it was Irene's mother who would be the unbelieving relative, because she's portrayed as being quite awkward and irritable and just generally uncooperative. In other words, she's portrayed in quite a negative light. But it turns out that it's not her who is the unbelieving relative, it's Irene's sister Elena, who, surprise, surprise, also turns out to, at least initially, be difficult, be a challenge to deal with, and who is patronizing or condescending towards Irene. We hear that exchange where Elena says, you know, I have to work a real job, whereas you're trying to arrange your schedule around your preaching, which is kind of accurate. I mean, it's not how I would put things if I were in Elena's situation. But nonetheless, we can see what this is, can't we? This is propaganda. This is showing relatives of Jehovah's Witnesses who are dealing with essentially cult followers. It's portraying them in a negative light. It's showing them to be sneering and condescending and patronizing. It's not showing them to be loving and understanding and reasonable and accommodating, which will be the case in many cases. It suits the organization's narrative in this series of dramatizations for Elena, Irene's sister, to be, at least from the beginning, difficult. And what I did find interesting was the following exchange with Irene's mother.
You know, your sister had a tough year. You should study with her.
Your sister had a tough year? You should study with her. That's the reason why Irene should study with her. Not because Irene has the truth, not because Armageddon's coming and Elena's only chance of salvation lies in becoming one of Jehovah's Witnesses, The biggest consideration is the timing. Elena has had a tough year, meaning that she might be emotionally compromised. Therefore, her critical thinking skills might not be as sharp as they normally would be, and now would be the perfect time for Irene to exploit her little sister's predicament and rope her into the cult.
Colossians chapter 4 and verse 6 reads as follows: "Let your words always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you will know how you should answer each person." So do we see these ingredients here? We must be tactful. We must be respectful. Now it says also always be gracious. So in all circumstances where our patience is pushed to its limits, and also it says so that you will know how you should answer each person. So each member of our family is different. They all have their different sensitivities, beliefs. So by being patient and loving, and also by being good listeners, we can look for appropriate opportunities to give a subtle witness. And by being discerning, we can also get good results because we won't be overwhelming our relatives with too much information all at once. It would be like pouring an entire bucket of water on a tiny little plant. We will kill it. So when a relative expresses a slight interest in the Bible's message, always answer in a way where the door will be kept open for the next opportunity. And even if your initial efforts to share the truth with your relatives are not well received, as we saw in the video, do not give up. Circumstances and attitudes can change. So continue to look for another opportunity to share another point that might awaken their curiosity.
We've just been hearing from Bethelite Han Zubin, who works at the Patterson, New York Bethel facility. He's been taking us through the symposium item, "With patients put up with one another in love, unbelieving relatives." And this was a fascinating part of an otherwise underwhelming talk, where Han Zubin again pushes this narrative of withholding information. Don't give them too much information. We want to withhold information if they start asking questions, because we don't want to overwhelm them. We don't want to share honest information about our beliefs that might put them off. And what's interesting is we've already heard this rhetoric in the same convention session of this convention. Earlier we were hearing it from Michael Reno, who was essentially advocating for "we'll deal with it later" in terms of how to deal with Bible studies. If a Bible student has doubts or concerns, or they frankly disagree with what they're learning, rather than address it there and then, you kick the problem into the long grass and you wait for them to learn more, so that the sunk cost fallacy kicks in. They invest so much in terms of time and emotions in the belief system that what was initially a massive red flag for them becomes more of a little gripe and then eventually just disappears altogether. And that's similar to what we're hearing later on in the exact same session, where another Bethelite is effectively saying, don't give your unbelieving relatives too much information about your beliefs if the conversation goes in that direction, or if there's any kind of exchange where they're wanting to understand your perspective more. Be a bit cagey with them, withhold information, because if you share too much, it will be like pouring a bucket of water on a tiny plant. Better to leave them in the dark, better to leave them guessing, and slowly work on little by little, incrementally manipulating them into joining your religion.
So this is your room here on the right.
This is nice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
We'll let you get settled in, okay?
Love you, Grandma.
So, do you want anything else?
Irene, you know this is not what I wanted.
Mom, where's all my kitchen stuff?
We organized and changed out some things.
We?
The girls and I did. You know, it's not your thing, Irene. We decided my stuff is better. You'll see.
Hey, babe. Are you okay?
Max, how many times have I asked you to take your shoes off at the door?
Sorry, I keep forgetting. I was just making sure you were okay.
Just clean, and it's like you don't even care about how hard I work.
Can you pass me the salt, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
These need more than salt. Irene, why didn't you make these homemade?
They are.
I think they're great.
Thanks.
Sorry about earlier.
Yeah, me too. These past few months, I didn't expect them to be so hard. And I'm really sorry about what this is doing to us.
We're in this together. You know, Jehovah sees everything you're doing for your mother. And he's so proud of you.
I think I'm going to need a bucket if we're going to get to the end of this series of dramatizations, which is being shown on the Saturday morning session of the Exercise Patience 2023 Convention of Jehovah's Witnesses. This particular symposium item, with patients put up with one another in love, your mate. So the whole point of what we've just seen was to educate Jehovah's Witness husbands and wives on how to get along in their marriage. And what we saw was Irene's mother moving into the family home and creating tensions. Irene snaps at Max when Max is trying to be supportive simply because he hasn't taken off his shoes. And by the end, we see both Max and Irene offer apologies, even though Max hasn't done anything. He's just been perfect, which, to be honest, is what irritates me most about these dramatizations. And let's remember how they began last year in the Pursue Peace Convention, when this family was introduced to us right after Max and Irene had first gotten together. And up to that point, Irene had been taking family worship. And Max ends up having to counsel his wife because she's talking too much during family worship. She's not understanding her role, her position as a wife in the family. She needs to shut up, essentially. Thumbnail here, if Tibor is gracious. So right from the get-go, this whole series of dramatizations has been misogynistic. It's been condescending and patronizing towards women and showing women in an extremely unfavorable light. In this case, not only showing Irene as being a loose cannon, as being overly demanding, as being, I don't know, difficult to live with, but also Irene's mother. So two female characters in just this segment that we've just seen are being shown in an extremely unfavorable light, and Max is just some perfect guy who can do no wrong, apparently. And all of this in an episode where we're supposed to be learning how husbands and wives, men and women, are supposed to be showing patience in their relationships. I think it's fairly obvious that it was predominantly men who wrote this script.
So why is patience with children necessary? Well, let's open our Bibles to Deuteronomy, the 6th chapter, and we're going to look at verses 6 and 7. Deuteronomy, chapter 6, and verses 6 and 7. And it reads, "These words that I am commanding you today must be on your heart, and you must inculcate them in your sons and speak of them when you sit in your house and when you walk on the road and when you lie down and when you get up." Now, the expression "these words" is a reference to verse 5, which says you must love Jehovah your God with your whole heart, soul, and strength. So parents really are being told in this scripture, Deuteronomy chapter 6, that parents must use each day to get the love for Jehovah in the child's heart. But first, where does it have to be? It should be in the parent's heart. No, not should. It must be in the parent's heart. That takes patience to get the love for Jehovah God into a child's heart. It takes patience to help a child see that Jehovah is a person and to appreciate the person behind the name. It takes patience to turn thoughts into feelings, to understand that every happy moment in life is a precious gift from Jehovah God. It takes patience to help a child be grateful, to expect nothing, but to appreciate everything. The picture painted in Deuteronomy chapter 6 is not a rigid picture of a school-like setting. No, if the love of God is in a parent's heart, then throughout the day, talk about Jehovah will be natural. Talking about Jehovah makes us happy. Talking about Jehovah makes our children happy. And it certainly makes Jehovah's happy.
I would be interested to know whether this guy has children. I would be genuinely fascinated to know whether he has freeness of speech in this area, as we would say when we were Jehovah's Witnesses. Because he is, after all, a Bethelite. So statistically speaking, the probability of him being a father is tiny. This is Jeff Malone, by the way, from the Warwick Bethel, the Warwick facilities of Jehovah's Witnesses, taking us through the symposium item on the Saturday morning. With patience, put up with one another in love, your children. And what he's giving here is essentially a child indoctrination 101. And of all of the disturbing, chilling, highly triggering stuff we've just heard, here's one particular messed up idea that I found personally triggering.
Now, the expression "these words" is a reference to verse 5, which says you must love Jehovah your God with your whole heart, soul, and strength. That takes patience to get the love for Jehovah God into a child's heart.
I've spoken before on the channel about how this particular aspect of my upbringing as a Jehovah's Witness troubled me. Even as a child, I grappled with this constant indoctrination, these constant reminders that I needed to love Jehovah, a person I'd never met, with my, not just a bit, not just a significant part of my heart, soul, mind, and strength, but with all of it. So I had to love, again, a person I'd never met more than I loved my parents and my sister. And that really did a number on my young mind. I can remember challenging my parents about it in the car. Perhaps we were on the way to the Kingdom Hall, I don't know. But I remember saying to them, how can I do it? How can I love Jehovah more than I love you? But that's what's being asked, not just of my parents, but of generations of parents right through to today. What comes first is from the moment a child is able to talk, from the moment they're able to reason and have conversations, Jehovah's Witness parents need to start the process of turning them into Jehovah's Witness drones. And here's an example of some of the warped reasoning Jehovah's Witness parents are expected to use on their children.
It takes patience to help a child see that Jehovah is a person and to appreciate the person behind the name. It takes patience to turn thoughts into feelings, to understand that every happy moment in life is a precious gift from Jehovah God.
Every happy moment in life is a gift from Jehovah God. That's what they've got to teach their children. Something nice happens to you. If someone gives you something that you really like, or they do something really kind, maybe you have a really special holiday with your family. Maybe you're swimming in the sea and you have an amazing experience. Maybe you have a really happy memory. That's Jehovah. That's total nonsense. It doesn't make a shred of sense. It is lying to children. It's messing around with their development. And if Jeff Malone really believes this, how does he account for when bad things happen? So what he's essentially saying is, if good things happen to you, that's Jehovah. If bad things happen to you, that must be something else. You can't have it both ways. Either Jehovah is intervening in your life to give you all of these positive experiences, in which case he's also responsible for the negative experiences, for the grief, trauma, heartache you go through, or he isn't.
Hey, thanks for getting me.
Yeah, anytime. How was work?
It was good.
Yeah.
It was long.
Hey, do you know him?
Hey.
Oh, yeah.
Man, I'm so glad I caught you. So, I wanted to get your phone number just in case any work stuff comes up after hours, you know? Is that okay?
Yeah, okay. It's 646-480-6649.
Okay, I got it. If anything comes up, I'll be sure to give you a shout, all right?
Okay, cool. See you tomorrow.
All right, see you all. Hey, actually, I was about to grab something to eat, and I wanted to see if you wanted to come with me.
No thanks. We've really got to get going.
Next time for sure, then. I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
What was that all about?
It's nothing.
I hope not.
Trust me, it's nothing.
I can guess who that is.
Who's that?
Just a doctor from work.
Wow, he's persistent.
He's persistent? Wait, is he interested in you?
I guess.
When were you going to tell me about this?
There's nothing to tell.
You told him no, right?
I haven't. I don't.
Wait, you haven't told him no?
No, not yet.
I've taught you better than that. You know you have to be firm from the start.
It's not that simple.
It is that simple, and you need to do it now. Hey, I'm sorry. I overreacted. I want you to know I do trust you. I've never had a reason not to.
I know. But I'm not a teenager anymore.
You're not, but I'm always going to be your dad. And dads worry about their kids. It's just part of the job.
I really need this job to pioneer. What if he doesn't take it well?
That could happen. But then you'll get to see what Jehovah will do.
I'll talk with him tomorrow.
Is there anything I can do to help?
Maybe say a prayer for me?
I'd love to.
Wow, so Saintly Max finally loses his temper in this series of dramatizations. We're watching the symposium from the Saturday morning of the Exercise Patients Convention. This particular part with patients put up with one another in love, your children. So this is advice for Jehovah's Witness parents on how to deal with their children, only it seems that Sue isn't a child anymore.
But I'm not a teenager anymore.
So how is this about dealing with children if Sue is actually not a teenager, she's an adult, and she's able to make her own decisions when it comes to who she's romantically attached to? I think the problem here, there's always an underlying message, isn't there, in this propaganda? Whether it's a demeaning misogynist view of women or something else, in this case, the underlying message is quite clearly that Jehovah's Witnesses are to marry only in the Lord. That's immediately the problem when there is even a whiff of Sue being involved with someone at work. That's what gets Max all riled up. That's what makes him lose his temper for the first time in this series of dramatizations that stretches all the way back to last year's convention. Finally, he loses his rag, not because something really bad has happened, not because Sue has done anything bad, but because Sue might be attached to someone at work. And let me just address something which probably you picked up on as well. This is not how you deal with this situation.
So I wanted to get your phone number just in case any work stuff comes up after hours, you know? Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, sure, Paul. You can have my number. Just get it from HR. I'm your subordinate in this hospital who can apparently be summoned if there's some overtime to do. Speak to HR. They'll give you my number. That seems to me to be the way this would work. But obviously, this has been written by Bethelites, again, living in this bubble where they don't get to interact with the real world. and where their ideas come up against very little pushback in terms of making things realistic. Well, how can they come up against pushback? Because they're in an echo chamber where no one really has any real experience of the real world, and they don't understand that in the real world, this is borderline, if not full-blown sexual harassment. If this guy, Paul, really needs to contact Sue in order to arrange for overtime, he should do it through the proper channels. This is not how you do this. But how are the writers of this dramatization supposed to know this? Because for most of them, it will be years, if not decades, since they were in secular employment.
Mom, do you want some fresh air? There you go.
I'm getting hot. I got it.
Mom, okay. Mom, it's not time to take your pills. Mom, it's not time.
I want to take my pills.
It's not time.
I want to take my pills.
Mom, stop.
Irene, I want to take my pills.
Do you know how long it takes me to do this?
I'm not taking those dirty pills.
Mom, why do you have to make everything so hard?
I'm sorry. Maybe it won't be so difficult for you when I'm gone.
Mom, I know this is hard for you. It's hard for the both of us.
I don't know how to make it any better.
I know. But I love you. And I want to do this for you.
I love you too, Irene.
Psalm 71:14 says, "But as for me, I will continue to wait." When we're patient, good things happen. We preach. We help each other do what's right. We take care of the people we love. And we give Jehovah time to bless our patience.
Thank you. I just got back from service.
Hey, Elena.
Hey.
What's going on?
Well, I got this in the mail. Do you have time to talk?
Sure.
Of course, Elena now wants to become a Jehovah's Witness. Irene's sister, who's seen firsthand how totally normal and non-dysfunctional a Jehovah's Witness family is. I'm relieved to be at the end of this series of dramatizations, although, again, we started with this family, this epic saga of Max and Irene and their children in last year's convention. So now I'm wondering whether they will be a regular feature. That seems to be a risky strategy for reasons I will go into. But nonetheless, here we are at the end of the story for at least this year's convention. This particular segment is shown in the symposium with patients put up with one another in love, infirm or elderly family members. Yes, apparently you can't navigate a situation where you are a caregiver for an elderly or infirm person who is challenging or whose behavior is challenging unless you're one of Jehovah's Witnesses. That's the message we're supposed to take here. So for me, that's just an insult to the countless caregivers around the world who deal with these situations on a daily basis with patience without being in any kind of cult, let alone Jehovah's Witnesses. How insulting to suggest otherwise. This, for me, is another classic example of them taking a problem that applies to everybody and that is dealt with or can be dealt with by everybody, and having the arrogance to suggest that only Jehovah's Witnesses are successful when it comes to coping with this problem, or they can be successful if they apply Bible verses or take the advice that the organization is ready to give. And as though that's not infuriating enough, we then have this wholly unrealistic scenario right at the end of Irene's sister saying, you know what, I think I'll join this group, or at least expressing an interest, having received a leaflet. Mind you, is it unrealistic? Because we already heard in this particular part of the dramatization, or this series of episodes, that Elena has been having a tough year. She's going through a challenging situation. So maybe she is emotionally compromised enough to want to consider having her life micromanaged for her by a cult. Maybe we'll find out more in next year's installment if there is a return to this family in the 2024 convention. But again, I think the organization will be taking a risk if they do this. And it's a similar problem that they have with the whole Jade and Nita thing. If you focus too much on particular individuals, if you keep bringing them back year after year, you become, as an organization that's producing propaganda, more reliant on these particular individuals who are portraying these characters staying within the organization. I mean, could you imagine how damaging it would be for the organization if the lady playing Irene were to wake up and realize that she's in a cult? I mean, I would love to have her on the channel and interview her and get her thoughts on how she's been made to portray this unhinged, unpleasant at times character in contrast to saintly Max, who it seems cannot put a foot wrong, who only loses his temper once in 2 years of these dramatizations. I would be really, really interested at some point to get to interview any of this cast. And that will always be a risk for the organization, won't it? When they're producing these propaganda pieces with recurring characters, it feels to me like more a case of when than if, when we're asking the question, will any of these cast members wake up, smell the coffee, and want to talk about how they were exploited without pay by an organization who used them for propaganda value to try to manipulate people?
But I'd like to start out by asking you a question. Are you happy? Might be a little nervous right now, but are you truly happy? Well, as servants of Jehovah, we can truly say that we are the happiest people on the face of this earth. Now, it's not because of anything we have done, but it's because of who we know and who we serve. The happy God, Jehovah. And that's why even in this world that's full of bad news and rampant with sadness, we have many reasons to be happy. And today we are extremely happy because of you, dear baptism candidates.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Jehovah's Witnesses are the happiest people on the planet, or so says Dan Al-Bailey, who's giving the baptism talk at this year's Exercise Patience Convention. His theme, Jehovah's Patience is Our Salvation. Dan Al-Bailey is a Bethelite from the Wallkill Bethel facility in New York, in upstate New York. And where to begin? He's just so obviously speaking nonsense. I mean, we established this as recently as the May JW Broadcasting episode, in which Mark Numer had the following to say.
As Jehovah's servants, nothing brings us greater joy than worshiping the true God. But we are also human. This means that from time to time, any of us can and probably will experience unsettling moments, times when we question our worth. For example, have you ever wondered about your true value in Jehovah's eyes? Have you ever experienced moments of anxiety about your place in his organization? Or have you struggled with feelings of worthlessness? Such thoughts can erode our joy.
So there's Mark Numer in this year's May JW Broadcasting episode, listing all the reasons why Jehovah's Witnesses are not immune from sadness. In fact, he's singled out some reasons why Jehovah's Witnesses might be conspicuously prone to sadness, because their beliefs might give them a feeling of worthlessness, of never quite living up to God's expectations, of constantly feeling as though there's some way in which they could improve as people. Mark Numer, for me, completely contradicts this narrative that Jehovah's Witnesses are the happiest people on the planet, which is what Dan Al-Bailey wants us to believe. And quite frankly, all you need to debunk this nonsense is just some lived experience as a Jehovah's Witness. I can remember encountering many fellow believers when I was a Jehovah's Witness who struggled with their mental health to the point where they needed medication, they needed antidepressants. There was no difference that I could tell between the overall happiness of your typical Jehovah's Witness and the overall happiness of your typical non-Jehovah's Witness. If anything, even when I was a believer, it seemed like there might be some kind of problem. And of course there will be when you're in this toxic culture that is not only micromanaging your life and making or demanding to make all your decisions for you, it's also constantly reminding you of all the ways in which you don't quite match up that may lead to you even losing your life at an impending apocalypse.
Well, next we'd like to hear from Brother Scott Gardner, who's also in the South Newburgh congregation. What pressure did you face shortly after your baptism, Brother Gardner?
Mine was association with family. My wife and I moved back to our hometown specifically to be with family after living out of state for 9 years. Shortly after arriving, we got baptized. And so being with such a large family in the area, there was a constant pressure, invitations to be with family. We loved our family. We spent time with them, but they're a little rowdy, so we had to limit our association with them. And that left a large void, and we were lonely at times.
Did everyone react the same?
No, my dad was really upset. Being one of 9, the only time the family got together was the holidays. He put us all through Catholic school, and I became a witness, so he was ashamed. He told family and friends that I was a pretty rotten son for a while.
That must have been really difficult. But what helped you to keep making progress despite that?
Doing what we're supposed to be doing, what we're encouraged to do, being at all the meetings, being out in service, family worship, Bible reading. That stabilized us and gave us some joy as a family. And then being patient. We know Jehovah is going to take care of us. We just had to wait.
Good. So were you able to mend things with your father?
Yes. I realized he loved me. I loved him. It was a matter of spending time. So I went out of my way to really spend some time with him outside of the holidays and being patient. It took a couple years, but we got back to a nice, solid, good relationship.
Well, that's nice to hear. And what about the loneliness? How did Jehovah help you and your family with that?
Jesus' words at 1929 rang true for us. We left fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers, but Jehovah provided for us. By being active in the congregation, we made so many friends. And on top of that, a strong, large spiritual family brought us in and made us part of theirs. It was such a blessing from Jehovah.
Wonderful. We want to certainly thank both of you, Sister Eaton and Brother Gardner, for sharing those encouraging comments for us.
Is this a parody? I mean, it's impossible to tell. I feel like this organization is driving me to insanity. I mean, I guess it isn't a parody. This was part of the JW Stream version of this year's Exercise Patience Convention. This is legit. So what we've just heard was in the baptism talk on the Saturday morning of the program. Jehovah's Patience is Our Salvation was the theme. And as part of the talk, the speaker, Dan Albailey from Wallkill, interviews 2 Jehovah's Witness publishers. And by publisher, just to clarify, I mean someone who reports time in preaching on behalf of Jehovah's Witnesses, can be baptized or unbaptized. I think Scott Gardner here was more than likely baptized. And it was Scott Gardner's story in particular that stood out to me because it had to do with shunning. And let's just remember the reason why Scott Gardner shunned his family.
They're a little rowdy, so we had to limit our association with them. And that left a large void, and we were lonely at times.
They were a little rowdy. That was the reason why he had to shun his family and spend less time with those he grew up with those he cared about. And bear in mind, people are being invited to this convention who aren't Jehovah's Witnesses, and they're supposed to sit through this talk that's really intended to be motivational for those who are just getting baptized as Jehovah's Witnesses. But the convention itself is being advertised to ordinary members of the public. And at least in this part of the program, an ordinary member of the public is being told, if you become one of Jehovah's Witnesses and your non-Jehovah's Witness family is a little rowdy, you have to shun them. Predictably, this shunning leads to Scott and his wife feeling awful and dealing with feelings of loneliness, missing their family. It leads to tensions with the family, who are understandably disturbed at the fact that people they care about have joined this group, and because of them joining this group, they are now effectively shunning them or spending way less time with them. So there's tensions there. And guess what ends up being the solution?
I realized he loved me, I loved him. It was a matter of spending time. So I went out of my way to really spend some time with him outside of the holidays and being patient. It took a couple years, but we got back to a nice, solid, good relationship.
Well, that's nice to hear.
Scott spent time with his unbelieving father, his unbelieving Catholic father. He spent time with him. He stopped shunning his Catholic father. That was apparently the solution. Again, are they trying to make me crazy at this point? I feel like I'm losing my mind. Can they please make their mind up? Is shunning bad or is it not bad? It seems that we start off in this experience with shunning being necessary because Scott's family is a little rowdy, and by the end of it, it's all happily ever after because Scott stops shunning his family and spends more time with them. Anyway, that's all I have for you. Those were my thoughts on the Saturday morning program of this year's Exercise Patience Convention of Jehovah's Witnesses. Stay tuned to the Lloyd Evans channel for the next few sessions in the convention, the Saturday afternoon, the Sunday morning, and the Sunday afternoon. I hope you found my thoughts useful. And for now, thank you so much for watching.